Missed on my side.
Yeah, missed on this side, too.
As he tried to latch on, through its motion caused the satellite to wobble, making subsequent attempts even more difficult. But he kept trying.
Ah, dang it. Why it's not grounding? I didn't get it. I mean, I had a good feel on it. I saw it coming, guys. Okay, I think it's going to be pitching now. Yep. That might be all of it today.
With that, the astronauts and ground controllers were ready to call it a day and look at options for another attempt later.
You'll probably ask me if I'm disappointed, and the answer is yes, but I am not discouraged, and I'm not discouraged about the capability of this team, and we will persevere through this and hopefully accomplish the primary mission.
NASA officials remain hopeful that they'll eventually be able to rescue the satellite. They said from the start they knew it would be a difficult operation. They're finding out now just how difficult it is. Tony Clark, CNN, reporting.
While ground controllers mull their options, NASA is getting some help from the public. A spokesman reports several callers have phoned in ideas on how to snare the satellite. One suggested using a big rope to lasso the satellite Western style. Other ideas? Well, how about Velcro? Maybe the power of magnets or a bungee cord. And one caller recommended spinning an astronaut in sync with the rotation on the satellite.
Well, with a scant 7% of the ballots now counted, a 46-year-old former judge is leading in the Philippine presidential elections. Miriam Santiago has a narrow lead of some 50,000 votes over the man the outgoing President Aquino had endorsed, Fidel Ramos. In the slow counting that could take till the end of May, Imelda Marcos is running a distant fifth. Observers say in the 7-person field, the winner might get as much as 25% of the votes, maybe less. Some 75 people have been killed in the campaign, and there were bombing attempts in and around Manila. Britain's Queen Elizabeth went before the European Parliament for the first time today, urging representatives of that 12-member European community to act in unison while retaining the identity of each individual member. She's calling for the EC to open itself up to new members, including those new democracies emerging in Eastern Europe. Britain takes over the EC's rotating presidency in July. Scandal is rocking mostly Roman Catholic Ireland. Eamon Casey, the former Bishop of Galway, admits that he fathered a baby 17 years ago. Mother and child now live in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and Casey acknowledges he sent money over the years, including $120,000 in church funds in 1990. The money, he says, has been repaid by private donation since Casey resigned last week.
Azerbaijan is accusing Armenia of attacking the key town of Lachin. If true, it would open a corridor from Armenia to Azerbaijan's disputed enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia denies the claim. Fighting has been flaring all around the region, which is ethnically Armenian. Virtually all of Nagorno-Karabakh's Azerbaijani population has fled the region. The European community pulled its last observers out of Sarajevo today. It says the intensity of the ethnic warfare in Bosnia-Herzegovina makes their job too dangerous. Terry Lloyd followed the monitors out of the battered Bosnian capital.
Overnight, a burst of parting shots in the distance to convince the last remaining monitors it was time to go. They were unwelcome by the militias, and that was made clear. At first light, Special Envoy Colm Doyle emerged en route to Lisbon to brief Lord Carrington on the latest events. The monitors hastily packed, anxious to leave Sarajevo before news became widely known that European ambassadors were being withdrawn from Belgrade. As former Gurkha officer Jeremy Braid knew all too well, this new development could enrage the Serbs.
I hope very much that the situation improves to the point where we can think about coming back.
Are you concerned about the route out for your own safety?
Obviously we have concern. There's a long way to go and a lot of country to cross.
Well before breakfast time, the convoy set off, regretfully leaving behind it an unfinished job. It was the start of a precarious 200-mile journey which would take them through a gauntlet of checkpoints. We stayed with them through the areas they were most anxious about, but at the first major Serb roadblock, they were waved through without problems. The tension increased for the next 2 miles as the convoy crossed over no man's land. For the monitors, the next checkpoint would prove crucial, depending on who was in charge. As they drew close to the concrete bollards, the uniformed Croat militiamen were equally friendly and ushered them through. They were now into disputed but mainly Croat-held territory and had worked out a route which would get them to the coastal resort of Split. There they would team up with 21 of their colleagues who left Sarajevo a fortnight ago. Terry Lloyd, ITN, on the Bosnian-Croatian border.
Indian lawmakers are condemning the decision by the United States to ban all trade for the next 2 years with the Indian and the Russian space agencies. These sanctions were imposed in retaliation for India's plan to buy rocket technology from Russia. The United States and other Western countries have been trying to stop the spread of missile technology, especially to developing nations. When Iraq's Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, he did more than bring down the wrath of Desert Storm. He also dispossessed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many still stuck in Jordan. Their stories ahead on World Day. Also coming, living your own life in a world of virtual reality with a walk-in computer.
This is CNN.
Checking our top stories on NewsHour now. In the Los Angeles area overnight, 3 men were arrested on state and federal charges in connection with the beating of the truck driver Reginald Denny, and more arrests may follow. Denny was pulled from his vehicle on the evening of the verdict in the Rodney King case. He has undergone extensive reconstructive surgery on his face, is hospitalized, still in intensive care, but in good condition. President Bush is now talking up a 6-point plan aimed at addressing problems of the inner city and without raising taxes. He ran it by the Democratic congressional leadership this morning, and they appeared to be cooperative. The program would include a project to weed out gang leaders and combat crime and promote economic growth. It would include added opportunities for home ownership, would set up enterprise zones to encourage business to open in inner cities, would reform education and allow parents to choose schools for their children, and would reform the welfare system by encouraging the recipients to save more while creating more job opportunities and training for inner city youth. The president announced also today that he will attend that UN-sponsored Earth Summit next month in Rio de Janeiro. Mr. Bush had hesitated in committing to the global conference, now says though he believes environmental issues can be discussed without compromising economic growth. U.S. participation in Brazil is considered essential to the meeting's success. Well, the astronauts aboard the space shuttle Endeavour are planning another try tomorrow to try to round up that $157 million communication satellite, then get it boosted by rocket into its correct high orbit. Thus far, 2 attempts to grab the satellite by a big stick have failed. A latest plan, one they're still discussing though, would be to set aside the tool and just try to grab the satellite and sort of bulldog it by hand. We'll see.
Let's check the latest financial headlines now with Terry Keenan at the New York Stock Exchange.
Thanks, Bobbie. The blue chips are fighting back from an earlier 14-point loss. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is hovering around the break-even mark after yesterday's record performance. The Dow is down 2 2/3 points at 33.94. Big board volume is heavy with 109 million shares traded so far. The other key indexes, however, still under some selling pressure. Some stocks in the news today. Restaurant chain Sparrow plunging 10 points after reporting lower than expected first quarter profits. The Limited down 2 points, also on lower than expected first quarter results, but a slight pickup in profits helping Ann Taylor. The retailer's stock up 1.25 points. Wells Fargo down 2 1/8, giving back most of yesterday's big gains, and Mid-Atlantic Bank up 1.75 points. That on optimism about the bank's meeting today with analysts. Wholesale inflation remains in check. The producer price index rose a modest 0.2% in April. That matches the gains in the 2 previous months and is the 18th month in a row wholesale inflation has measured 0.2% or less. Long-term interest rates are lower following that inflation report. Many economists and bond traders say a low inflation rate may give the Federal Reserve room to cut interest rates again soon. Right now, the yield on the Treasury's 30-year bond is down to 7.85%. The price up 13/32. The dollar is lower. It's down more than 2 yen. off 1.5 pfennigs against the German mark, down 1 3/4 cents against the British pound. A report out today blames credit card debt for slowing the economic recovery. A study by the Boston company Economic Advisors said if credit card rates had been 2 percentage points lower over the last 2 years, consumers would have had an extra $7 billion to save or spend. And finally, PepsiCo International and General Foods have agreed to merge 6 of the European snack food divisions. PepsiCo will own 60% of the new company, General Foods the remaining 40%. The no-cash deal will create a company with annual sales of $600 million. That is the latest in business news. One more check of the Dow before we go shows it's down 5 points. We'll be back in an hour with another update. I'm Terry Keenan reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, it's presidential primary day in 2 more states, this time West Virginia and Nebraska. President Bush and Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton again are heavily favored. A total of 56 Democratic and 42 Republican delegates are at stake. Mr. Bush already has won enough to assure nomination by the Republicans, and Clinton is edging toward the magic number for Democrats. Teamsters President Ron Kerry is urging the union's 1.5 million members to support a Democrat for president, and in a satellite address yesterday, Clinton asked Teamsters to make him that Democrat. The union's National Legislative Conference is meeting for a second day in San Francisco, and it will vote on the candidates today. Kerry says Teamsters have gained little by supporting Republicans over the past 12 years. Meanwhile, H. Ross Perot is roaring toward his expected presidential candidacy. Supporters dropped off 90 boxes of petitions at the Texas state capitol. The boxes contain the signatures of some 225,000 voters, 4 times the amount needed to get Perot's name on the Texas state ballot. The signatures come from voters upset with the present U.S. political climate.
The country definitely needs to change. We need a representative for us that's going to help us get our desires and needs met.
Ross Perot, from all I can gather, is an honest man, and I believe we'd have an honest government.
Because of very special people like you, we can build a nation that the rest of the world looks up to. There will be a source of strength and kindness not only here, but all over the world.
Supporters say so far, Perot has qualified for the ballot in 20 states.
And just ahead on NewsHour, Tom Kirkland with sports. Portland and Phoenix put in some overtime last night in the Valley of the Sun.